Now let's take a look on what's making headlines this particular morning. Now, a day after 15 people were reportedly killed during the nationwide anti-government protest held on Wednesday, grieving families gathered at various morgues across the country to identify the bodies of their loved ones and demand justice for what they described as senseless killings. At the Nairobi Funeral Home, formerly known as City Mortuary, 4 bodies were received on Thursday morning. By afternoon, 3 of the bodies had been identified by relatives. All the victims bore gunshot wounds, with some families confirming that their beloved ones had been shot in the head. Families from counties including Makueni and Nyeri said their relatives were young men between the ages of 17 and 23, many of them students. Right, moving on, Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has made explosive claims regarding the June 25th nationwide protest, alleging that they were part of a well-orchestrated plot to overthrow the government by force. Addressing journalists in Nairobi, Murkomen condemned the demonstrations as a deliberate attempt to incite chaos and undermine national stability. According to Murkomen, the protest, initially billed as peaceful commemorations by Gen Z activists, were hijacked by individuals with criminal intent. He alleged that the planners had targeted businesses, government property, and homes of pro-government politicians for destruction and looting. The Interior CS further revealed that security agencies had obtained video evidence showing vehicles transporting large sums of money, which he claimed were used to finance the unrest.
What unfolded yesterday was not a protest. It was terrorism disguised as dissent. There was no peaceful demonstration. It was riots, chaos, and anarchy. Let me therefore state unequivocally that we condemn the criminal anarchists who, in the name of peaceful demonstrations, unleashed a wave of violence, looting, sexual assault, and destruction upon our people. More than 10 Kenyans were killed. Investigations are ongoing on the numbers and the circumstance that this happened. Over 400 were injured. Close to 300 are police officers. Some left with injuries they will carry for the rest of their lives. Police stations were attacked by thugs, and their mission was just to get the guns and police uniform. And I can see some of these boys on TikTok. They are wearing police uniform, calling themselves sergeants, and that they have taken over power. Make no mistake, we will come for you, and we will come hard. No bishop, neither Catholic nor Anglican or any other church leader who will come public to defend the police. I know that for sure. Nobody will speak about how the police were attacked, injured, and suffered immense pain as a result of the various. Nobody will do so. I also know that no diplomat will come to public to defend our police, because it is not in their interest for Kenya to be a safe nation and to be a prospering country with full democracy. All those people would prefer anarchy, chaos, at the expense of peace. And since there is no one who is going to defend our police officers, I want to speak authoritatively here. I thank you, our police officer, for a job.
Right, at the same time, the Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen has accused sections of the media of inciting last Wednesday's Gen Z protest, claiming they played a direct role in mobilizing demonstrations under the guise of live reporting. Addressing the press at Harambee House just a day after the national protest commemorating the June 25th, 2024 demonstrations, Murkomen defended the government's decision to suspend live broadcast, framing it as a security measure aimed to averting further unrest. According to the Interior CS, some journalists and media outlets went beyond their reporting duties and instead acted as facilitators of the protest. He alleged that live interviews and on-air commentary encouraged citizens to join the demonstrations and even directed them towards high-security areas such as State House. Murkomen singled out the Standard newspaper, accusing it of misleading the public by pushing what he termed as political agendas rather than upholding journalistic ethics.
We have the freedom of media in this country. The biggest problem with live broadcasting, having watched a number of them media stations yesterday, is the idea that media becomes the center of mobilization for some of these protesters. In fact, most of the media houses are working very hard during the onset of protest, telling people, oh yeah, wengine wamekuja, sasa tayari ndio hawa. They interviewing people in the street and tell them, what do you tell those who are still at home? You see, they are participating, directly in mobilizing people to come. But what was even of greater concern to me is some of the media stations whose job was directing the protesters. And they are saying, oh, now they are in Thika Road. As soon as they converge with the ones in Kiambu Road, the possibility is that they will pass through Museum and State House will be very near. You see, that is really very irresponsible journalism. Of course, the gentleman from Standard knows that Standard now has stopped being a newspaper. The headlines for the last 2 months or 3 months have always been about security and insulting people without resorting at one instance to ask for feedback from anybody, not even any person. Now they have these interesting headlines that pass judgment on the Inspector General of Police, the Minister, the President. Of course, the President lives on their headline. I understand the desire and the tough economic times for newspapers to sell. But that cannot happen at the expense of our country. And this is really of great concern to me, that the media houses were expected to have self-regulation. Apart from, at the end of the day, even the media houses are doing business in Kenya. If this country bans, just because you wanted to sell newspapers, you wanted to do media engagement, it's a loss to everybody. And more importantly, let me say this, that it is unfortunate that political actors are relying on media. It's not becoming independent enough to give both sides of the story.
All right, moving on, Deputy President Kithure Kindiki has delivered a scathing condemnation of the violent nationwide protest witnessed on June 25th, labeling them as the most destructive civil unrest in Kenya since the post-election violence of 2007-2008. Addressing residents in Kambo, Kibwezi East constituency, Kindiki described the protest as shameful and lawless, blaming them for civilian death, large-scale looting, and the destruction of both public and private property. Speaking on behalf of President William Ruto, the Deputy President stated that the government would no longer tolerate any form of disorder or anarchy. Kindiki criticized certain religious institutions and church leaders for allegedly inciting youth to take to the streets without restraint under the guise of exercising their constitutional rights. Now, he further accused some foreign envoys to international representatives of embodying the protesters through their public statements, calling such actions inappropriate and destabilizing.
Ambao wamekuwa wakiombea taifa letu la Kenya, wakiombea amani, wakiombea uwiano, wakisema ya kwamba hata kama tuko na matatizo tujaribu kufanya mazungumzo na kusikizana bila kuumizana. Na mimi nawapongeza viongozi hao wa dini ambao wako na uzalendo wa kujua ya kwamba nchi yetu ya Kenya ndiye kwetu, hakuna pahali pengine pa kwenda hii nchi yetu ikichomeka. Tafuta watoto wadogo wanaweza torokea nchi zingine. Sisi watu wazima especially, it is not possible kuhamia hata ukiwa mkimbizi. Wherever you go will never be your home. Lakini tunajua kuna viongozi wa dini wamechochea vijana, wakiwaambia mko na haki ya kufanya kila mnaweza, kila mnataka, mko na haki, mko na uhuru, fanyeni vile mnataka, kuna mtu ya kukuzuia, hata polisi asikukanyange karibu na wewe, na kutumia vyao kama watu wako na usawishi kwa jamii. Wakachochea vijana, ile ilitendeka jana ikatendeka. Swali, ningetaka hao viongozi wa dini ambao walichochea vijana, wakiwaambia uhuru wenu hauna mipaka, unaweza fanya chochote unataka, hawa viongozi watueleze kama hiyo maneno ilifanyika jana ndio walikuwa wanataka ifanyike. Manyumba ya watu kuvunjwa, mali ya watu kuporwa, wasichana na wamama kubakwa, vituo vya polisi kuchomwa, bunduki kuibiwa, kotini unachomba kotini. Badala ya kusema mambo yako, uko na shida na hii, hautaki vile polisi wamefanya, tunataka hii hatua ichukuliwe, alafu unarudi nyumbani, inakuwa ni siku ya kupora, kuharibu nchi, kuumiza wananchi.
Right, government-allied members of parliament have raised alarm over the growing wave of anti-government protest, warning that the demonstrations are increasingly turning violent and harming the country's fragile economy. Speaking during a heated session in the National Assembly on Thursday, June 25th, the MPs expressed concern over the destruction of property, disruption of businesses, and the endangerment of lives during recent protests. Trans Nzoia MP Lilian Sioi declared the impact of the protest, stating that the demonstrations had caused widespread damage and were undermining national stability. She criticized what she termed as one-sided narrative pushed by some churches and human rights organizations, accusing them of shielding criminals under the pretext of defending constitutional rights.
The people who are inciting and misleading our children and allowing them to do the wrong thing, I really want to demolish these people. Yesterday we saw a sudden stringent and flooding of people coming from the direction of Thika Road. And I want to believe that was not, that was organized. It did not come from different people. You remember very well last year when the former deputy president, when he was telling Kenyans that you do not expect to go to the streets to demonstrate and then the police kiss you. This person is applying double standards. He is the same person who is now inciting the young people to go to the streets. He's the same person who is inciting people to come and destroy the property of other people. And I really want to speak to our people and tell them there is nothing wrong with demonstrating. But also let's not allow ourselves to be driven into situations where we are destroying property, we are destroying police stations, we are beating up police.
Na leo tu nataka niwaulize swali, haki ya wanabiashara ipo wapi? Kwa sababu hii si mara ya kwanza wameporwa mali yao wakati ambapo tuko na maandamano. Na hakuna fidia ile ambao wanapewa baada ya kama zile demonstrations zimefanywa jana. Haki yao ipo wapi? Nimesikia pia makanisa yakitetea hii mambo ya demonstration wakisema iwe peaceful. Lakini tangu tuwe na demonstration kwa historia ya Kenya, sijawahi ona demonstration ambayo imekuwa peaceful hata moja.
We do not always all have to have the same opinion on matters. We can have people who disagree. But also inciting young people to walk towards State House to remove the head of state. So we remove the head of state and then what? And yet we have a constitution that outlines very well what we should be able to do. State House is a protected environment. If you try to access there, we all know what is going to happen to us.
2007 also there was a problem, and that is why it led to the change of the constitution. But today we are not understanding why exactly people are trying to break this country. And yet we have an election that we can express our views, we can express our displeasure. The election is coming in 27. So in the meantime, let us make this country cohesive. Let us leave our country as a cohesive.
Right, moving on to the corridors of justice. Two individuals were yesterday arraigned at the Milimani Law Courts on charges of publishing false and deceitful information aimed at stirring public unrest and encouraging an attempted storming of State House. Suleiman Wanjau Bilal and Robert Otiti Elwak were brought before the court accused of using social media platform X, formerly Twitter, to circulate a protest timetable designed to mobilize demonstrators for what authorities alleged was a planned illegal action against state institutions. The prosecution told the court that the information shared by the two was misleading and intended to provoke public disorder. The Director of Criminal Investigation, that is the DCI, has asked the court to grant them 10 more days to detain the suspects, and investigations continue. According to investigating officers, the post had the potential to cause panic and threaten national unity. The shared timetable reported detailed times and locations for coordinated protest activities, including a planned march to State House.
And we have represented the young people who were arrested and charged with unlawful assembly, contravention of Section 78 as read with 79 of the Penal Code, and they have been released on cash bail and some of them on free surety personal bond. And Senator Kamau Murango, myself, and Honorable Madenge will ensure that we pay the entire cash bail amount for all arrested Gen Zs.
Right, moving on, residents of Kikuyu town in Kiambu County are grappling with uncertainty and outrage after the Kikuyu law courts were set ablaze during the June 25th nationwide protest commemorating 1 year since last year's anti-finance bill unrest. The incident, which authorities have described as criminal act, resulted in a significant damage to key judicial infrastructure and vital court records. The arson attack has disrupted access to justice in the region, leaving numerous suspects, including those in remand custody, unable to have their cases heard. Leaders from the judiciary has since condemned the act, vowing to restore services through alternative measures, even as they acknowledge the severe damage would take time to fully repair. Now, lawyers and judicial officers who visited the scene expressed deep concern over the attack. Advocate Julius Njoroge described it as a grave violation of human rights and direct assault on independence of the judiciary. His sentiments were echoed by other legal practitioners who called for swift investigations and accountability. Chief Justice Martha Koome, who toured the scorched premises on Thursday, confirmed that no court staff were injured in the incident.
It is unfortunate ya kwamba hatuna computer wala file wala anything. The rest of the instruction tutapeana with time, si ndio? How possible itakuwa ku reconstruct your file, we will discuss kama stakeholders, and then we will find a way ya ku communicate.
The entire Kikuyu law courts was burnt down. The office of the DCC's headquarter, we had procurement offices there, we had the head of the AP, and of course at the Gureti Center we had an entire police station going down in ashes. So the destruction is massive.
So the civil cases are online, so we have an online backup. The proceedings are manual, so those ones might be lost. The physical files might be lost, but we can be able to salvage. You can open skeleton files for the civil cases, but the criminal cases might have to start de novo, which is a great miscarriage of justice to those who've been advancing their cases for quite some time over the last
Right, moving on, President William Ruto yesterday officially signed the 2025 finance bill into law, marking a significant milestone in Kenya's fiscal policy as the new regulations take effect starting July 1st of 2025. Now, the newly enacted law introduces several amendments across key statutes, including the Income Tax Act, Stamp Duty, and Tax Procedures Act, and the Value Added Tax. One notable reform allows employees to directly deduct income tax and from employers' salaries, incorporating applicable exemptions, reliefs, and credits as stipulated by the law. Furthermore, private sector employers will now be required to pay a daily allowance of 10,000 Kenya shillings to employees as a non-taxable benefit, a significant increase from the previous threshold of 2,000 Kenya shillings. Effective July 1st, employees will also benefit from the income tax exemptions on payments related to gratuity and other benefits under the pension scheme. To widen the tax base, the law imposes income tax on non-residents earning income through digital businesses operating in Kenya. Additionally, the previous digital assets tax has been repealed and replaced with a 5% excess duty on fees charged for digital asset services.
Excellency, the last bill for the day is the Finance Bill 2025, which was introduced in the House following his submission in draft form by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury on 31st of April, as required by the PFM Act. It is introduced in the name of the distinguished member for Molo constituency, Your Excellency. The bill, upon being published, went through extensive public participation throughout the country. We also used modern technology this time, using apps. The bill was considered, taking into account the views of the public, and passed by the National Assembly. Last week, on 19th, the bill is proposing amendments to various laws relating to taxes, including the Income Tax, the Excise Duty Act, the Value Added Tax, the Tax Procedures Act.
The third bill to receive your assent will be the Finance Bill 2025, National Assembly Bill number 19 of 2025. The bill honors Your Excellency's commitment to the nation that there will be no new taxes in this financial year. The bill sets out fiscal interventions designed to enhance the business environment and reform the tax regime, making Kenya a more competitive nation to invest in. Among the seminal legislative proposals carried in the bill include the prioritization of the Kenyan worker within the fiscal framework through proposed amendments to the Income Tax Act, mandating the automatic application of employee tax reliefs and exemptions. In addition, the bill proposes the exemption of gratuity payments and pension scheme allowances from taxation. Amendments under the Value Added Tax Act include exemptions on mosquito repellent inputs and the local packaging of tea, measures intended to strengthen both the manufacturing and agricultural sector.
Right, moving on, Isiolo Governor Abdi Ibrahim Guyo has been impeached by the Isiolo County Assembly following a decisive vote in favor of a motion to remove him from office. The impeachment motion, tabled by Serichom MCA Abubakar Kodana, was supported by 16 out of 18 members of the County Assembly, that is the MCAs. 2 members were absent from the session and none voted against the motion. The Assembly cited multiple grounds for impeachment, including gross misconduct, abuse of office, and the violation of the Constitution and various statutory provisions. Now, specifically, Governor Guyo was accused of breaching Chapter 6 of the Constitution on the Leadership and Integrity, as well as contravening the Leadership and Integrity Act and the Public Officers Ethics Act. Now, these laws emphasize principles such as respect for the rule of law, good governance, accountability, and transparency. Despite being formally invited to respond to the allegations, Governor Guyo did not appear before the Assembly. His absence was noted and the session proceeded as per the standing order of the County Assembly. Right, moving on to the corridors of justice, a significant development has emerged in the high-profile murder case of Kasipul Member of Parliament Charles Ongondowere as businessman Philip Nahashon Aroko. One of the main suspects has been released on bail and is now set to become a star witness for the prosecution. This move marks a crucial turning point in the complex case that has seen several arrests and charges filed. Now, although full details of the agreement and the testimony Aroko is expected to provide remains confidential, authorities anticipate his cooperation will be vital in unraveling the intricacies behind the brutal killing. The decision to release Aroko was after a legal tussle culminating in a ruling on May 20th of 2025 by High Court Judge Diana Kafetza, who overturned an earlier decision by the resident magistrate court at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport that had denied Aroko bail. Judge Kafetza supported the prosecution's request to have Aroko detained further, citing the sensitive and ongoing nature of the investigation. However, following further legal proceedings, Aroko was granted bail. Since his arrest, Aroko has consistently denied any involvement in the killing. MP Charles Ongondowere was fatally shot on Wednesday, April 30th of 2025 near the city mortuary roundabout along Gong Road. Reports indicate that the deceased was struck by 4 bullets fired from close range by a lone assailant who fled the scene on a motorcycle immediately after the attack. Keep your gun. Right, now Faith Kipyegon fell short in her bid to become the first woman in history to run a sub-4-minute mile. Now the Kenyan 31-year-old clocked 4 minutes, that is 0.6.42 seconds in perfect conditions and at Stade Charletti in Paris, a time 1.22 seconds faster than her world record in pursuit of the momentous feat. Now the time will not be recognized as an official record because Kipyegon was assisted by a team of male and female pacemakers and wore technologically advanced kit and shoes at Nike-sponsored Breaking 4 event. Now Kipyegon's official women's mile record of the 4 minutes 7 seconds and 64 milliseconds set in July 2023 remains almost 5 seconds faster than other female athletes in history as ran for their distance. Now it was that record performance in Monaco which made Kipyegon believe sub-4 once considered psychologically impossible for a woman was within reach. Now, but 3-time Olympic 1500 meters champion still had a chance to bridge being required to run 2 seconds per lap faster than she had before. Kipyegon was kitted out in an aerodynamic skin suit and specially designed spikes as she targeted sub 60 seconds laps, an average speed of about 15 miles or 24 kilometers per hour. She was aided by 13 pacemakers, including Britain's Olympic 1500 meters bronze medalist, that is Georgia Hunter-Bell and Gemma Reiki, as she chased the wave lights, tracking her progress in the inside curb of the track. All right, congratulations to Faith Kipyegon for representing Kenya. Now, we're taking a short commercial break. It is 32 minutes past the top of the hour. We'll be back on the other end of the break to bring you what's making headlines on our newspapers today.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Right, welcome back to the program, and let's take a look on what's making headlines on our dailies today. And I'm having the Daily Nation newspaper dated today, the 27th of June 2025. The Standard newspaper and the Star newspaper all dated today, the Friday, June 27th of 2025. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Daily Nation. And
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world. You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
all right, I apologize for the technical hitch. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines on the Daily Nation dated today. Top story on the Daily Nation: tears and losses. And there are pictures there of looted businesses in the Nairobi's capital, or rather the Kenya's capital, that is Nairobi. Bystanders outside Naivas supermarket, of course, in Nyeri County, Nyeri town yesterday, a day after it was broken into and looted during protest to mark the anniversary of the June 25th, 2024 demos. Right, there is a picture there of a woman, Ms. Agatha Kirago, during an interview at her home in Kagiru village in Jeru County yesterday. Her son Joseph Ndonga was allegedly shot by police in Othaya town during Wednesday's protest. And business owners outside their looted stalls on Temple Road in Nairobi yesterday. Of course, chaotic scenes right there, you know, millions of stocks looted by the so-called protesters. Now back to zero for traders. Businesses owners wake up, broken promises, looted goods and lost millions. Families pain and agony. Homes, villages thrown into mourning as protest death jump to 16. Unprecedented attacks. Roadly protesters wreck 9 police stations, court banks, government offices. Murkomen wants the media. Now the Interior CS assures media houses of fueling protests, or rather accuses the media houses of fueling protest and threats. Shutdowns, of course. Full stories on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 of the Daily Nation. Let's take a look on that particular story on the first pages of the Daily Nation. Of course, the first pages of the Daily Nation, there are pictures there. It actually looks like a eulogy, this particular newspaper. Now, there's a picture there of city residents and traders yesterday at a burnt building near OTC, Nairobi, damaged during Wednesday's protest marking the first anniversary of June 2024 finance bill demonstrations. There is a picture there of Chief Justice Martha Koome and the Kikuyu Law Courts. Rather, at the Kikuyu Law Courts yesterday, a section of the court was burnt to ashes. On Wednesday, a man looks at a looted and burnt business premises near Globe Roundabout in Nairobi, and smoke billows from Musa House in Nairobi yesterday, a day after it was looted and set ablaze. Also, traders stand in empty shops in the OTC area of Nairobi yesterday after they were looted during the protest. Now, also traders in the OTC area of Nairobi assesses the damage after their shops were looted and some burnt down during Wednesday's protest. Also, on the Daily Nation, page 3 of that particular newspaper, traders at a burnt building near the OTC area in Nairobi yesterday. The building was among those set ablaze during Wednesday's nationwide protest marking the first anniversary of the June 2024 Gen Z-led finance bill demonstrations. Workers and traders outside the still smoldering Musa House in Nairobi yesterday. Now, the DCI detectives at the OTC area in Nairobi, of course, that was actually outside Quickmart supermarket, and traders in the OTC, of course, area of Nairobi yesterday assesses the damage after their shops were looted and some burnt down during Wednesday's protest. Now to take a look at this particular newspaper, pictures there, saddening pictures of, businesses looted. So unfortunate that the traders wake up to an empty shops in the Nairobi CBD. Now let's take a look on the tears, losses as families thrown into mourns. Now when she first sent her firstborn son David Kariuki, a 19-year-old, to pick up her lastborn aged 7 from the tuition school in Maziwa area of Imara Daima on Wednesday, Rachel Nyambura did not know it would be the last time she would see him alive. As soon as she told him to go to his younger sibling, he quietly put on his shoes and went, but instead of returning with his brother, Kariuki became the victim of the fatal bullet allegedly fired by a senior officer from the nearby Villa police station. The bullet struck him on the forehead, killing him instantly. Now, just like Kariuki, who was to join Deakin College along the outer ring called to pursue a course in mechanics, became another statistic, one of the many who died at the hands of the state security agencies during the Wednesday's commemoration of the June 25th, 2024 anti-finance bill protest. Now seated in their home in Mukuru kwa Jenga, Ms. Nyambura could not hide his pain. Tension had been high in the informal settlement, with tear gas and running battles between civilians and the police. Now she said that, this prompted her to send Kariuki to get his brother. However, when the 7-year-old returned home alone at around 3 p.m., she thought little of it. Only thing she raised concern was that Kariuki was normally collected goods from a food vending business at 3 p.m. and had not yet done so. She decided to collect the goods herself. On her way back, she received a phone call from a local youth informing her that her son had been shot dead and his body was lying at Villa police station. Quite an unfortunate story right there. Now families mourn Kim killed in the demos. Now 12 minutes after calling his wife to inform her about he arrived in the Kikuyu town, Kevin Njau lay in a pool of blood, killed during the demonstrations on Wednesday. Ms. Winifred Wangare, a 23-year-old, said she spoke to her husband at 3:48 p.m. When she called back, a stranger answered and delivered devastating news. Now, Njau, the 23-year-old who had left home for work on Monday, called that Wednesday, and the wife demanded that to be told why the family's sole breadwinner was killed. Now, when Ms. Fatuma Makoha left her house in Ongata Rongai to look for work, she instructed her 17-year-old nephew Ian Opango to remain at home. She began receiving images from locals on her phone at 7:30 p.m. Insistively, she went to Saitoti Hospital, where staff said Opango had been referred to Kenyatta National Hospital. Now, Ms. Fatuma now wants the Independent Policing Oversight Authority to investigate the killing. And of course, there is a picture there of Abdi Kani Duro, who was shot in Thika town. Victor Otieno, a college student in Thika. Fred Wanyonyi, a guard at Steamer Plaza, Nairobi. Ian Opango, 17-year-old, quite young, was killed in Ongata Rongai. David Mwangi was shot dead in Embakasi. Of course, it was a day of chaos and tragedy, violence between protesters and the state security agents. Now, city traders state failed to use on security. Now, shattered glass, empty shelves across shops, stalls, and supermarkets told the story of a capital in turmoil. In the aftermath of Wednesday's protest, traders in the Nairobi Central Business District were yesterday counting the cost of the chaos, with millions lost to looting, arson, and the destruction. Yesterday, hundreds of traders returned to the scenes of devastating of what used to be their businesses. Some scrambled to restore order and revive their economic activities, even as those affected demanded answers and compensation. Now, from Imenti House, to Mfangano Street, Nyamakima, Temple Road, Salvation Army, and OTC. There were destruction marked by shattered windows, strewn packaging, and twisted metals. Several roads in the city were also impassable, blocked by debris. Witnesses recounted how an anti-riot police and protesters engaged in running battles. A coordinated looting spree unfolded now. Of course, just in case you passed in the Nairobi CBD today and actually yesterday, there was it actually looks like a dumping site. Of course, businesses looted, glasses everywhere, and quite unfortunate scenes in the Kenya's capital. Right, let's take a look on the Star newspaper dated today, the 27th day of June 2025. Top story on the Star newspaper says, kills aftermath death rise to 15. Tears, screams echo in the corridors of City Mortuary. Of course, that particular story is a story that is on page 234, or rather page 2 to 9 of the Star newspaper. There is a picture there, and of those people who died, families demanding for justice. Now family identifies bodies of relatives killed in the protest. There was grief and anger of families streamed to the Nairobi Funeral Home yesterday to identify bodies of victims killed in the Wednesday's protest that rocked the capital. At least 15 people have been confirmed dead following the nationwide demonstrations at the mortuary. The pain of loss was palpable as relatives came face to face with the brutal reality of the police shootings. 4 bodies had so far been identified. Now, Vocal Africa CEO Hussein Khalid said the bodies were of David Mwangi, Fred Wanyonyi, a 17-year-old Ian Opango, and a 23-year-old Kevin Njau. Now, the Star met with the Ian Opango's aunt, Fatuma Opango, and had come from Rongai to identify the teenager's body. Of course, it is quite unfortunate, young people being killed by bullets. Also on page 4, grieving families and heartbreak for families as death toll rises to 15 after the demos. There is a woman there on page 5 of the Star newspaper crying. His stall is actually empty. It was looted. A trader consoled after her shop was looted and vandalized during the protest. And right is William Musemi Muteti, a 21-year-old, was shot dead in Maturu, Machakos County. Of course, today's newspaper is quite, unfortunate to read. Now let's take a look what the government has to say about this. Now Raila Ruto allies Gachagua using Gen Z to attempt coup. Now allies of President William Ruto and ODM leader Raila Odinga have accused the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua of exploiting the Gen Z-led protest to orchestrate a regime change. National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, Minority Leader Junet Mohammed, and 9 MPs faulted Gachagua for the chaos that ensued during protest that was on Wednesday. Now, rights organizations say at least 15 people were killed and more than 500 injured in the protest, which were held to commemorate the more than 60 Kenyans who died during demonstrations against the Finance Bill 2024 in June last year. Now, property of unknown value was destroyed, shops looted, and dozens of protesters arrested. Elsewhere, Interior CS, that is Kipchumba Murkomen, also claimed that the organizers of Wednesday's nationwide protest were attempting to orchestrate a coup. Speaking during a press briefing after touring parts of Nairobi to assess the aftermath of the protest, Murkomen alleged that the demonstrations were a calculated and coordinated attempt to overthrow the government. In Parliament, Junet accused Gachagua of ethnically mobilizing demonstrations and transporting them to sponsored a motion calling on the police IG to investigate the perpetrators of the demonstrations. Right, that's what the government has to say in regards to the just concluded demonstrations to commemorate the 60 people who died during the last year's anti-finance bill protest. Right, now let's take a look on what's making headlines on this. On the Standard newspaper says death and destruction. Right, that's a top story on the Standard. While protesting to honor fallen Gen Z heroes, They were, or rather, they have become the latest victims in the nation that slaughters its future before their blood even dries. Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen has doubled down, issuing a chilling shoot to kill order. Of course, I've taken a look at that particular, press statement of the Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen saying that any protester who, wants to loot the police officers or rather the police stations should actually be killed or rather be shot at. Those are the words of Kipchumba Murkomen, during yesterday's press briefing in Nairobi. Of course, that police story is on Standard newspaper on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 12 of the Standard newspaper. Let's take a look at snippets of what the Standard has to say in regards to the protest. Now, traders grapple with heavy losses amid distractions and looting spree. Now, Customer supermarket in Githurai 45, Nairobi, was looted and merchandise destroyed. Of course, actually, this is actually in Githurai 44, not 45. The supermarket is actually empty. The shelves are empty. Only you can only see papers. Quite unfortunate scenes right there. Now, traders in several parts of the country were yesterday counting losses as normalcy resumed after the Gen Z protest on Wednesday, while some decried lost businesses as a result of closure of their premises. Others were assessing losses after goons who had infiltrated the protest looted some properties. This happened as the country and national government officials also began taking stock of the destruction, which also targeted the public property. In Bungoma, a manager at Jedlika Hotel, Josephat Onchiri, said foodstuffs were looted from his premises by more than 50 goons. The mob stormed the hotel, destroyed televisions in the lounge, then raided the kitchen and bakery. They consumed all available food, looted items, and left a trail of destruction in their wake. He said some of the staff sustained injuries as they attempted to stop the goons from accessing the facility. The hotel management condemned the attack, noting that the establishment is not affiliated with any politician. Now, other traders said they had to close their premises for fear of looting and opted to stay at home. For instance, Maureen Ofula, a cooking gas supplier, said she was afraid that her shop would be looted by protesters. Similarly, a trail of destruction was left at the county headquarters after the protest turned violent. There is a picture there of an empty stall in OTC in Nairobi after mobs made away with goons. This stall actually looks like, it's a new stall ready to be rented out. Nothing at all. All right, there is a picture there of business owners, of course, in Naivasha, Nakuru County, suffered losses after protesters stormed and vandalized their premises. All right, about 50 armed goons entered the premises, of course, for the hotel manager in Bungoma County. Traders lost millions and looters on rampage. ATMs destroyed at Githurai 45 during the June 25th, 2025 protest in Nairobi. On page 4 of the Standard newspaper, the aftermath, 15 dead, survivors nurse injuries after deadly protesters. Wilfred Wangare, a widow of the 23-year-old Kelvin Njau, mourns her husband at the Nairobi funeral home. Yesterday, Njau was shot and killed at the Kikuyu bus stage during Gen Z protest on Wednesday. Medics carry an injured protester during the Gen Z first anniversary demonstrations. Right on page 6 of the Standard newspaper, CAA, that is Communication Authority, forced to restore TV signals as sportsmen sued over internet posts. Now, Standard Group PLC's KTN is back on air after the High Court ordered the Communication Authority of Kenya to reactivate the signals. The directive came as more cases were filed challenging the CA's order to media houses to stop the live transmission of Wednesday's protests. Besides KTN, the agency also switched off NTV signals and, of course, K24 signals before Justice John Chigiti gave orders in a case filed by Katiba Institute Justice Chacha Mwita had suspended the directive by CA Director David Mugonyi following an application by the Law Society of Kenya. Yesterday, the Kenya Union of Journalists under the Media Law Association of Kenya filed a third case arguing that the decision violated the right to information and the international covenants on civil and political rights. Right, that is a picture there of protesters marching along the road during Gen Z-led protest on June 25th of 2025. That was on Wednesday. Right, it goes on and on and on and on and on. From page 2 to page 10 of the Standard newspapers, matters death, matters looting and vandalizing of businesses across our country. Now let's take a look on what's making headlines in the world of sports. And Faith Kipyegon inches closer in her bid for sub 4-minute mile. Now, triple Olympic champion Faith Kipyegon of Kenya fell short in her bid to become the first woman to run a sub 4-minute mile yesterday. Now, aided by wavelength technology and 13 paces, 11 male and 2 women, Kipyegon clocked 4 minutes. That is 06.42 seconds over 1.6 kilometers in perfect coordination at Stade Charity in South Paris. The time was better than her own world record of 4 minutes and 7 seconds, 64 milliseconds in the non-Olympic event set in Monaco in the year 2023, but it will not stand as a new world record given the presence of male pacemakers. No woman has ever attempted to sub 4 feet, which was first achieved in 1954 by Britain Roger Bannister in 3 minutes 59.4 seconds in what has gone down as one of track's running most momentous event. Of course, congratulations to our very own Faith Kipyegon. Right, it is exactly 2 minutes past the top of the hour. We're taking a short commercial break here on the program. We'll be back in just a bit on the other end of this particular break. Imagine a world where every student has a personal AI study partner helping them to learn smarter, write better, and unlock their full potential. Well, that we're going to take a look at that particular conversation, matters education and technology, with the co-founders of Soma AI. Don't want to miss that particular conversation. See you on the other end of this particular break.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world. You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Our generation will not die